So the US government has actually gone to bomb another country, Venezuela, and captured the president and his wife and flown them out of the country to on a known location. Now, I do not support invading a sovereign country, a sovereign nation, by a supposedly superpower or world power. But while the chaos was happening in Venezuela, I was doing a lot of digging to know the sins of Nicolas Maduro, the now ex-president of Venezuela. Now, the US, according to reports, the US have actually been tracking the country and been dealing with drug cartels in that country. And under the guise of drug cartels, the US this morning bombed the city Caracas and captured the president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife. But then I started looking at what actually is the problem, what is the sins of Maduro himself. And I stumbled on an April 15, 2019 article released by the US Department of State on Venezuela. And when I was going through the article, I'll read some part of it to you in this video. It struck me that a certain African giant is having similar problem as Venezuela. Now, let me explain to you what happened here. Is that when state institutions are weakened by leaders, by power-hungry people such as Maduro, you are giving leverage to an outsider to invade your country. When you weaken the judiciary, when you weaken the police, when you weaken the legislature, when you weaken the law enforcement, just because you are a leader, you have inadvertently given power to an outsider to take advantage of that particular thing that you're doing to invade you. Now, I'll read out about 3 points of what the US said is the sin of Maduro, his unconstitutional acts. Number one, in 2015, pro-democracy opposition parties resoundingly defeated the Maduro regime in a legitimate elections. Shortly thereafter, Maduro dismantled various branches of government. Lame duck National Assembly. Just look at the parallel. Lame duck National Assembly President Diosdado Cabello rushed to stack the country's courts with unqualified party hacks to serve as Maduro's guarantors of power. Maduro himself put people in the National Assembly who will do his bidding, who will be his rubber stamp to everything that he was doing, according to the US Department of State. Number two, on February 11, 2016, when the National Assembly proceeded to seat three legitimately elected deputies, the Supreme Court declared the National Assembly in contempt, rendering all subsequent legislature approved by this democratically elected body null and void. Maduro has deliberately sidelined this constitutionally legitimate assembly ever since. He has been operating outside the National Assembly, Maduro, since 2019. I am not in support of the US invading another country in the guise of whatever. There are internationally accepted diplomatic means of resolving issues. But when corruption, electoral malpractice, power mongers, when an elected officer becomes too much, too powerful, this is the consequence of what happens. Now, in 2017, acting on Maduro's order, the CNF, which is the election body like INEC, organized widely contested election for the National Constituent Assembly, whose primary objective was to draft a new constitution. Instead, Maduro used the National Assembly to usurp the powers of the legitimate National Assembly, ratify its orders, and enact laws, many of which vilify and disparage opposition figures and their policy proposals. These are the acts of Maduro. Now, I said before, when corruption festers in a country, institutions of power are weakened. The police are weakened. Policies are poorly implemented. This is the result of what happens. The US will take advantage of the loophole that you have created in your country and come in. Now, Maduro's corruption, I will read 2 points from the US Department of State. I'm not saying what they are saying here is true, but I'm just letting you know that this is what happened in Venezuela. Maduro's most egregious corruption scheme involved embezzling from the state-owned company Petróleos de Venezuela. That's our like equivalent of Nigeria's NNPC. He dipped his hand into the company's national oil. In 2015, the US Department of Treasury Financial Crimes Enforcement Network issued a finding under Section 311 of the USA Patriotic Act. A European bank accepted exorbitant commission to process approximately 2 billion in transactions related to Venezuela's third-party money launderer, share companies, and complex financial products to siphon off funds from the company, the state-owned oil company. In 2018, 1.2 billion money laundering scheme involving Matthias Krull, a German national and Panamanian resident, and Gustavo Adolfo Hernandez, a Colombian national and a naturalized US citizen, exploited the country's national oil company and took advantage of the corruption in Venezuela's foreign currency exchange system by trading US dollars from Venezuela bolivars at market rate, and they are back again. Now look at this. Look at this. Now, Venezuelan currency is the worst currency in the world. In fact, you can, when you see it on the road, you can just be kicking it on the ground because it's worthless. I want you to draw parallel to what is happening in West Africa, especially in Nigeria. When you weaken institutions or national institutions, you weaken the police, you weaken the National Assembly, you weaken various enforcement agencies. That's what the result. A state collapse. May Venezuela not happen to Nigeria.